Hey there, folks. Santee at the Arizona Ghost Raiders here. We got some mail. Santee, you should do a video on Bass Reeves. Westward Productions. Bass Reeves. That's interesting. Let's do it. For this week's episode, I worked with author and historian Art Burton, who has done notable research on Bass Reeves. Art and I are acquainted with Ernest Marsh, who has played Deputy Marshal Reeves in a number of shows, and is now working on the upcoming Yellowstone series, 1883. Many of us growing up watched The Lone Ranger on TV. None of us really knew at the time the similarities to Bass Reeves' life. Let's talk about it.
Hi-yo, Silver! Away!
Bass was born into slavery in July of 1838 in Crawford County, Arkansas. After a move to Texas, the son of his enslaver joined the Confederate cause and took Bass with him to fight in the war. After the Battle of Pea Ridge in 1863, there allegedly was a situation where Bass socked his boss right in the chops. This act, which for a slave was punishable by death, forced Bass to run. Reeves ran to Oklahoma, where he lived with the Native American tribes and learned their cultures and languages. 3 years later, the 13th Amendment put an end to slavery. Reeves moved to Van Buren, Arkansas, married, had 5 children, and started farming. In 1875, Judge Isaac Parker, known later as the Hanging Judge, became responsible for bringing law and order to the Indian Territory. It was an extremely dangerous region, with outlaw gangs and killers running roughshod over it. Lawmen of any ethnicity were targeted, which made this job extremely treacherous. In fact, 130 federal peace officers were killed in the line of duty during this time. Judge Parker appointed Marshal James Fagan to hire 200 capable deputies. Nope, wrong Fagan. One of those deputies just happened to be Bass Reeves. His knowledge of the region and ability to speak the languages were serious assets, a fact that was proven over the next 32 years of his career. Incidentally, he was one of the first African-American deputy U.S. Marshals west of the Mississippi River. Sure, it was a dangerous job, but it paid well and he had a lot of mouths to feed. Reeves gained the reputation of the indomitable marshal, coming in at 6 foot 2 inches tall and weighing about 190 pounds. He was a skilled tracker and excellent with a gun. Bass was also known to use disguises to fool the criminals he was chasing down. Clearly, the outlaw element in the Indian Territory was not amused by this fellow. In at least 3 instances, Bass was ambushed or tricked in an effort to get rid of him. Outlaws would find where the lawmen's camps were and bushwhack them. In 1884, a trio of desperados named the Brunter brothers got the drop on the deputy marshal with their guns pointed directly at him. In a sudden move, Bass drew his revolver and killed 2 of them, grabbed the barrel of the third brother's pistol, and walloped him into submission. Now, Reeves was known to carry a small arsenal with him. He went on manhunts with a Winchester rifle and at least 2 Colt revolvers. Bass frequently hired trusted folks to help him apprehend malfeasance, but going in alone was definitely in his wheelhouse. An interesting note, Bass Reeves was friendly with Bandit Queen Belle Starr. Apparently, they shared a common interest in racehorses, and she respected him as a fair lawman who took care of the worst ruffians. Even after his appointment as a marshal ended in 1907, he worked for the Muskogee Police Department as a patrolman. Due to the Jim Crow laws, he was only allowed to work in the African-American neighborhoods. On January 12, 1910, Bass Reeves died in Muskogee, Oklahoma. By the next day, his passing was national news. When I looked at all the newspaper clippings and research Art presented on Bass, my mouth dropped open at the sheer number of criminals the lawman brought to justice. 3,000 is the rough count. 14 of those resisted arrest and were brought down by his accurate shooting. He even served an arrest warrant on his own son. He told a U.S. Marshal that it was his responsibility to bring his son in, even though he knew it would be the toughest, saddest manhunt he was ever involved in. Here's another eyebrow raiser for you. The news articles used the familiar term notches on the gun, meaning that the shootist would carve a small groove in the grips of a revolver for each person they shot. Art says Bass would not have done such a thing, but in 1910, those newspapers suggested that others had. So much for my theory that it was a Hollywood invention.
And here we go, number 165.
As well as books, there have been numerous portrayals of the brave lawman on screen. In 1992, he was inducted into the Hall of Great Westerners of the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum. He even got a Texas Trail of Fame star at the Fort Worth Stockyards. Although these are great honors, I think we'll see more as the history of this amazing Old Westian continues to emerge. Well, folks, that's it for another episode. I want to thank Art Burton and Ernest Marsh for their help on this week's video. Well, as always, please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you on down the trail.